In Module 2, we covered how to download the large entity reporting spreadsheet. Now that we have our spreadsheet and are ready to start filling it out, Module 3 will cover how to complete that spreadsheet. Just some quick reporting basics before we get started. In order to report successfully, you must use the CAR-provided spreadsheet. If you use your own spreadsheet, it will not upload. If your operation has a peak season, that is the subset of time we want you to use to report your information. We want the average maximum usage values for your vehicle in order to make sure the structure of future regulations makes sense. We do not want to underestimate your needs. Lastly, most of the fields in the Excel spreadsheet have a drop-down. You will select the value that most closely represents your data. If a section does not apply, please select NA. This is very important. Before starting your reporting, make sure you're using an updated March 16, 2021 version of the reporting form spreadsheet or newer. The older version will still work, and many entities have successfully uploaded their information using the older version. However, the newer version includes a fix that will make your reporting more streamlined. Also, make sure that you enable the macros before you start inputting the information. If you don't enable macros, then certain functions, such as drop-downs or adding facilities or uploading the document, will not work. We'll start with the first tab, General Entity Information. Under Entity Name, if you are reporting a subsidiary, then include the subsidiary name. If you are reporting for a department for a city, then include the city and department name. A designated contact person should be someone who can answer questions about vehicles. For the address, be sure to provide the business address and not your residential address. If the highest level parent of a large entity is reporting on behalf of the entire corporation using only one reporting form, then enter not applicable. Subsidiaries reporting separately from the corporate parent using multiple forms must identify the highest level parent of the entity and only include information on that specific subsidiary. Government entities choose from the drop-down federal, state, local, or not applicable. Only include the trucker's ID if you've been reporting annually to comply with existing diesel regulations and have an active account. The reporting form will accept multiple trucker's IDs, but there is no need to create a trucker's ID if you do not already have one. Non-governmental entities must identify the total annual revenue in the United States for 2020. Select the best response in millions of dollars. Your options range from less than $10 million to greater than $1 billion. Select the appropriate drop-down. Subsidiaries reporting separately from the highest level parent only include the annual revenue of the reporting subsidiary. Do not include the total annual revenue of the parent company. Vice versa is true if you are the parent company reporting. Highest level entities reporting as a whole on one form include annual revenue for the combined parent and California-based subsidiaries. You'll need to enter all of the listed operating authority numbers if applicable, such as a motor carrier identification number, United States Department of Transportation number, California Carrier Identification number, the California Public Utilities Commission Transportation Charter Permit number, International Registration Plan number. If any of these do not apply to your fleet, select NA from the drop-down. If you subcontract different entities to serve your customers and represent your entity's brand, this question only applies to agreements where your company hires another company and their vehicle displays your entity's exact brand or logo to either pick up and deliver items on your behalf or perform work for your clients or customers. This question does not apply to other types of contracts where the companies are operating under their own brands or are not affiliated with your entity. Here's a couple of examples. If your entity is an online shopping service and hires another party that delivers items purchased from the shopping service to customer shipping addresses and identify themselves as a representative of your entity's shopping service, they would be counted. On the other hand, if your entity hires a company that displays its own brand in their vehicles, but also displays your logo as an endorsement and not their sole identifying marker, they would not be counted. Next, you'll select the number of subhaulers you contracted with in California to transport freight, goods, or other property from the drop-down menu. A subhauler is a for-hire motor carrier who enters into an agreement to provide transportation services on the behalf of another motor carrier or broker. If you're an entity that is not a for-hire motor contractor, or if you have contracts where you do not determine how the delivery is made, you can select 0 or NA. If you do have subhaulers, estimate how many total vehicles all of your subhaulers operate on your behalf. Of these subhaulers, how many operate under your motor carrier authority in California? If you have a motor carrier or broker authority and contract with subhaulers to serve your customers, then you will need to respond using 2019 or 2020 data. If you are not a for-hire motor carrier, then select Not Applicable. Does your company have a sustainability plan to reduce your carbon footprint? This can be any written plan that establishes goals or identifies actions for your entity to reduce its carbon footprint. If the reporting department or subsidiary has no written sustainability plan, but the parent or head company has one that covers the whole organization, select Yes. Does the sustainability plan include transportation goals? This could be methods like installing charging infrastructure or moving towards alternative fuel vehicles. In 2019 or 2020, how many vehicles did your entity own and operate in California that do not have a home base in California? This should be interstate vehicles or vehicles that do not have a home base in California but operated in California in 2019 or 2020. The last section is for comments. This is where you can indicate which, if any, of the responses you submitted contain trade secrets or confidential information. A really important piece of information is how to edit this form once it's completed. To edit a specific cell on the form, right-click on the desired cell and select Clear Contents. In the spreadsheet, if you click the Click Here to Reset Form button, you will clear all general entity information. That button is located in red text at the top of the General Entity Information tab. Again, this will delete everything in this section from the form. It does ask you if you're sure, so if you click it on accident, it won't immediately delete, but just beware. Next, we'll complete the Facility tab in the spreadsheet. The first question is, where is each vehicle kept when it's not in use? That's the vehicle's home base. For vehicles that go home with the driver, operate remotely, or are routinely used at multiple locations, the home base is the location where the vehicle is repaired or maintained. This can be an office building or other location with a physical address. The home base should not be reported as a residential address. For multi-use properties like a campus or military base, the home base may be reported as a single address and does not need to include specific building addresses, even if the vehicles are kept at multiple locations on the campus or base. Vehicles that accrue a majority of their annual miles in California, regardless of the state of registration, but are not assigned to a particular location in California, must be reported as part of the California headquarters or another location, i.e. the out-of-state location, where the vehicle's operation is managed. Brokers that dispatch vehicles they do not own need to list their own office as the home base location, unless they also operate a truck yard where the trucks are domiciled. If you're reporting for multiple subsidiaries, give them each a unique name so you can identify which is which. You'll be asked to classify the facility type. The facility types are fairly self-explanatory, but if you do need some assistance classifying your facility, a synopsis of what each facility type means is included in the reporting guide. Identify what type of refueling infrastructure is installed at the facility, if any, by selecting all of the fuel types dispensed at the facility. The spreadsheet allows multiple selections to be made in response to this question. Use the pull-down menu and select all listed fuel types that apply and click Finish within the drop-down menu to save your selection. Next, you'll select what type of trailers you pull at this home base or facility. Select all types of trailers that apply. Like the prior question, once you've selected all the trailer types that apply, click Finish within the drop-down menu. This selection also has a field for comments, like in the general entity information. This is where you can notify us if any of the information is considered trade secret or confidential. If you would like to add additional facility locations in the spreadsheet, select the Click Here to Add Facility button, located on the bottom of the form on the Facility tab. This will allow you to generate additional facility columns on the right side of the form. Once you have input all information for all the facilities you are reporting, the spreadsheet will automatically populate the home-based location information to be used in the next tab, which is the Vehicle Information tab. When you move on to the Vehicle section, the form will remember the facilities you entered in the previous section. In the drop-down, you will be able to select which facility you are referring to. If you only have one facility, that is the facility you will select. Once you select the facility, you will need to start grouping vehicle types for each facility. This step is extremely important. If you leave the home base cells blank or don't use the drop-downs to populate the facility information on this tab, type in the facility name manually for instance, the CSV conversion and form upload functions won't work when you're trying to complete your reporting. Vehicles are grouped by body type, fuel type, and weight class. For example, a freight hauler may have 50 diesel tractors that are all in the class 7-8 category. They also have one diesel truck with a service body and one gasoline truck that has a service body. All of the service trucks are in the class 4 to 6 category. In this example, all 50 tractors would be grouped together, but the service trucks would be separated because of the different fuel types. For each group of vehicles, there is a series of questions including daily miles traveled, average annual mileage, radius of operation, number of years kept, as well as other questions. After you've grouped your vehicles, there will be a drop-down menu where you can select a percentage for that vehicle group. You should select the percentage that is the closest 10% of the vehicle group. For example, if you have 50 diesel service body vehicles and 31 of them are dispatched by the government to support emergency operations, like it says in the first question, then you would select 60 from the drop-down. When we're looking at the mileage questions, like the ones listed asking for the vehicles, if the vehicles operate up to 100 miles per day or 150 miles per day, etc. For that section of questions, the total percentage should be roughly 100. If you go over 100%, the column will turn red because each vehicle in the vehicle group should only fall into one mileage category. All on-road vehicles with gross vehicle weight ratings more than 8,500 pounds and off-road yard trucks need to be included in this section regardless of fuel type or use. Note that you can export your fleet data from truckers for your trucks with a gross vehicle weight rating greater than 14,000 pounds into a spreadsheet to help with completing this one-time reporting form. Once we have all the vehicles grouped, we want to try to classify how much mileage each group is driving. This is where you need to be sure to try and reflect the information from your peak season. For example, if your company provides transport for online orders, 2020 may be the highest volume from 2019 to 2021. So that's what you would want to report. If you primarily provide restaurant delivery, maybe 2019 had the highest volume in the last few years. So that's what you should report. If you use a unique reporting period, such as having driver's records daily from daily mileages for a 2-week period in March 2021, the reporting form provides you a comment box where you can describe the reporting period used, and you can keep the driver's mileage logs as acceptable records. When you're reporting peak usage, use a value that represents the vehicle's use 9 out of 10 days. Do not use something like a one-time event where the truck logged 100 more miles than it typically would on a given day. For this reporting requirement, you do not have to report the PTO hours for vocational trucks. For brokers, the only miles driven under contract should be considered for the responses. Brokers are not expected to have information about the miles driven outside of the contract. Brokers are also not expected to have information on where the vehicle is domiciled, where it's fueled, nor whether it returns to a home base. When you are reporting mileage, do not include non-op or backup vehicles in your average totals. We want you to try and report mileage as a percentage. What that means is if you have a vehicle group that always operates on average 150 miles per day, you will select 100% from the drop-down under 150. Try to do this to the best of your ability to the nearest 10%. For example, if the mileage for a group of 110 vehicles is being evaluated, where 10 vehicles are backup vehicles, then the percentage calculation would be based on the 100 vehicles that are being operated. If 16 vehicles operate less than 100 miles per day, then the response would be rounded up to 20% of the vehicles operate less than 100 miles per day because you're rounding to the nearest 10%. This is the section where the total percentage should add up to roughly 100%. For this next section information, vehicle information, we're asking for a percentage of the time, so it does not have to add up to 100. The first question is, what is the highest approximate percentage of the vehicle group that was dispatched at the same time over the last 3 years on behalf of a local, state, or federal government to support an emergency operation, such as repairing or preventing damage to roads, buildings, terrain, and infrastructure as a result of an earthquake, flood, storm, fire, terrorism, or other infrequent acts of nature? This should be reported as a percentage of each vehicle group to the nearest 10%. What percentage of each vehicle group have a predictable usage pattern? This does not refer to a specific location each vehicle type travels, but rather to the amount of miles. If a truck does not complete the same exact delivery route, but consistently only does deliveries that are roughly 100 miles away, that would be a regular usage pattern. The same is true for things like garbage trucks or mail delivery, which typically service the same areas, even though they may not go to the same specific locations every time. An example of a vehicle that does not have a predictable usage pattern would be something like a construction vehicle, which may vary greatly in the distance it travels each day depending on the job location. Is the primary refueling for this vehicle group done at its home base? If you do not have on-site refueling, the answer to this question would be 0. Do the vehicles in this vehicle group return to its home base daily? If the vehicle is something like a campus transit bus, then that vehicle would be included because it does not leave the home base. For vehicles that return to a personal residence, the response should be 0. Do the vehicles in this group stay within roughly 50 miles of the facility? This is a yes or no question, and would be yes if the vehicle travels roughly 50 miles or less 9 out of 10 times that it's used. Brokers are expected to respond to this question using pickup and drop-off data from dispatch records. What percentage of each vehicle group that was reported to travel more than 100 miles per day tows a trailer? For example, if 40 trucks in this vehicle group travel over 100 miles per day, but only 8 of them tow a trailer when they do so, then you would select 20% in the drop-down menu. How many vehicles commonly operate at their weight limit? This question applies to how many vehicles are at the legal weight limit to operate on the road and are loaded to their maximum axle weight or total capacity of the vehicle. Brokers are expected to respond to this question based on dispatch records and load information to determine whether the load being moved is likely to be at the legal weight limit. How many vehicles are not registered in California? For this question, report to the nearest 10% the percentage of vehicles in each group that are registered in other states or jurisdictions, or are registered as non-operational. How many vehicles are regularly parked at the home base more than 8 hours each day? This will help us determine if the duty cycle would support charging. What percentage of vehicles in each group have GPS or another method of electronic mileage tracking? Brokers are expected to respond to this question and use information they have in their dispatch records about the vehicles. What percentage of the vehicles in this group are equipped with all-wheel drive? Four-wheel drive applies for instances where the vehicle group has 2 axles. What percentage of the vehicle group are backup vehicles? This would be vehicles with on-highway engines that are used intermittently, whether it is to maintain service during periods of routine or unplanned maintenance, unexpected vehicle breakdowns, or accidents, but these vehicles are not used in everyday or seasonal operations. Next, we'll have you estimate the mileage and time before turnover for each vehicle group. Identify if you are the owner of the vehicle or a broker dispatcher using the dropdown. The table then asks for your analysis start date and end date. For this field, we want you to indicate what frame of time you use to complete this form. These vehicles are not a drop-down, so you can write whatever time frame is most applicable. It could be January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. Or if you had your operators track a 2-week period, then list that 2-week period you used. If an alternative analysis report period other than annual or quarterly information is used, you must describe the approach used in the optional comment box and keep records of the method and data used for answering each question. Also in the comment box, as with the last sections, list what pieces of information are confidential, if any. Where do we go next? Similar to how government fleets are permitted to report, if you have multiple subsidiaries, you may report all of them on a single form or submit separate forms for each division or each subdivision. You must use the common parent taxpayer ID for each of the subdivisions so that we can see they are connected. If you use separate forms, each subdivision needs to have a separate login account. Here's some additional resources. We do have a large entity reporting guide that walks you through the information we've provided today. There are also web pages where you can view the Advanced Clean Trucks regulation, including the rulemaking documents. If you want streamlined information on the Advanced Clean Trucks regulation and don't want to read through the regulation in its entirety, we have the frequently asked questions sheet available for you as well. You can see upcoming zero emission regulations at the Zero Emission Fleet Rules at our Advanced Clean Fleets website, listed on the slide. We have an email address set up specifically to answer whatever questions you may have on the ACT reporting. It's actreporting@arb.ca.gov, and you can see it on the slide.